Shocker kind of looks like a pineapple to me.
Greetings, webheads! Welcome to episode 39 of the LaserComb Podcast, the weekly show where we comb through random episodes of classic TV with a fine-tooth laser. I'm the Siege, one of your hosts.
And I'm your other host, NeoCal.
This week on the LaserComb Podcast, we are continuing on with our Spider-Man themed month, and as always, we put the Spectacular Spider-Man, which ran from 2008 to 2009, total of 26 episodes, spread across 2 seasons. We put that through the trusty old random number generator and landed on episode 22, Probable Cause.
Spectacular, spectacular Spider-Man. Spectacular, spectacular Spider-Man. Spectacular.
So the episode opens with some villains fighting. We see the Shocker. We see a character who they call Ricochet. Ricochet is
But
a
it's
character.
also Fancy Dan.
Ricochet is a character that I'm familiar with from the comics, and let me tell you, this guy looks nothing like the Ricochet that I know. I was kind of excited that he was going to be in this episode, because I'm like, hey, Ricochet! I can talk about Ricochet and slingers, which I'm going to do anyway. So, back in like 1997, I think, there was a crossover across the 4 monthly Spider-Man titles, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, and The Sensational Spider-Man.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Those were the 4 main ongoing Spider-Man comics at the time, and there was a crossover called Spider Hunt, where Spider-Man had been framed for kidnapping Harry Osborn and Liz Allen's son, Normie. And like the Punisher got involved, and Spider-Man was a wanted man. It's like a $1 million bounty on his head. So Spider-Man hung up the old red and blue tights for a little while. And then another crossover happened called Identity Crisis, where in each of those 4 comics, Spider-Man took on a different identity. In Peter Parker Spider-Man, which was my favorite Spider-Man comic at the time, written by Howard Mackie and drawn by John Romita Jr., the son of legendary comic book artist John Romita Sr. And indeed, John Romita Jr. himself is kind of a legend in his own right at this point. In that comic, Spider-Man assumed the identity of Dusk, which was a flying, like, all black, like, suit with, like, wings that he got from the Negative Zone.
Ooh.
In the Sensational Spider-Man, he became a character named Hornet, which there was a joke in that comic where after he like saves some people, he gets interviewed by news people, and they're like, "Hornet, where are you from?" And he's like, "I'm from big smirk on his face. I'm from Charlotte." The
I
Charlotte
understood
Hornets.
that reference.
Yeah, right. And in the Spectacular Spider-Man, he assumed the identity of a character, the identity Prodigy, which was this like yellow suit with like a cape and like silver like metal bits on it. It was the most boring looking out of all of them, even more boring than the all black suit. And in I think in the Amazing Spider-Man, he assumed the identity Ricochet.
Oh, okay.
He didn't, which it was basically a silver bodysuit. He wore a black leather jacket over it and had a mask. They all had a mask, but he had a mask that covered his entire face. And he had hair like Bob from Reboot.
It was like part of the mask or the
It was part of the costume. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. He was a cool looking character. And he didn't use webs or anything with any of these identities. But he still utilized his powers in one way or another. I always liked Ricochet. I liked the look of the character. I thought his costume was really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, right? So after all of that ended, because that lasted for 2 months in the Spider-Man comics, where 2 issues of each book where he wore these different costumes. And then his name was cleared and he went back to being Spider-Man. Then, shortly there, like maybe a year later, Marvel launched a comic book called Slingers. It was a superhero team that was comprised of all of those identities that have just been taken up by new people. The comic was kind of infamous for a really like the most 90th of 90s gimmicks, even like along the veins of like same vein of like chromium covers and like holofoil covers and like just different variant editions. So because there were four heroes, uh, there were four versions of the first issue, and these were double-sized issues, so these were already like more expensive than your typical comic
Or
book.
versions, or just like variant covers, or
Variant covers, also variant pages. There were eight. They were double-sized issues, so they were 48 pages. Eight of the
wow.
pages in each. Keep in mind that the page count includes the ad pages.
Right,
So
right,
so when they say comic books are 32 pages, only 22 of those are actually content. The rest is just ads.
right,
They
right.
they they always include the ads in the page count. So of those 48 pages, eight of them in each variant cover were actually different and told a different side of the story from the perspective of each character. It's kind of a cool
Okay.
gimmick.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of a cool gimmick, but it drew a lot of flack as being just like a money grab. But
Yeah, I'm looking them up now, and kind of seems pretty cool. I just like the design of Ricochet, like you had said.
yeah, he
Yeah,
looks
the
rad.
yellow one is kind of forgettable, but
Yeah, that's
like
Prodigy,
the
like I said.
Hornet looks rad. Like they all kind of look rad. They're just
Uh,
rad dudes.
yeah. So Slingers, I read it only lasted 12 issues. It turns out that they were assembled by a character named the Black Marvel, who was actually one of the bargain bin. He appeared in the 90s Fox Kids Spider-Man show as one of the bargain bin Justice Society members. One of them was the Black Marvel. So the character of the Black Marvel was the one who actually like retrieved all of these identities that Spider-Man had utilized and like gave them to these like teenagers with attitudes.
Hey, the Black Marvel ain't even black. He's
I
just a
think he
white dude in a black suit.
I think he is actually.
Maybe in later ones, because I'm looking at variant stuff, and there's like kind of like a guy in a green. He looks like an older man, like an African American man, but like white on the sides, right? But then there's another dude who's just like a white, clean shaven dude with and like a super suit that's kind of just looks like somebody's OC.
Oh, like one of the various hero players you'd see flying around in DC Universe Online.
I'm looking, I don't know if it's the OG or not, but there's just yeah, it just looks like kind of a generic yellow gloves ready to do the dishes kind of DC Universe Online hero.
uh, Anyway, so and it turned out that Black Marvel did this because he had made some deal with Mephisto or something like I don't know. It got like really stupid. It wasn't a very good book, but it was something that stuck out in my head because I really liked those costumes, with the exception of Prodigy. Anyway, so Ricochet in this show looks nothing like that, which kind of disappointed me. But well, here we are, born to be kings.
No, yeah, and they mentioned that it's just like, okay, Dan, like what's your name? And it's like, oh, you can call me Ricochet, because as we find out, these villains fighting each other, they're actually just like practicing. They're on a team.
Yeah, they're a team of supervillains. One is the Shocker, the other is Ricochet, and the other guy just calls himself Ox.
And
He,
indeed, they were like, oh, okay, you're Shockwave. Oh, Ricochet. Okay, well, what do you want to be called? And the big guy's just like, Ox.
yeah, and together they call themselves the Enforcers, which I'm
And
like,
there's like a
what are you
scientist there. Yeah, what are you
what
enforcing?
are you enforcing?
And there's a scientist like there that's like, ah, yes, all of the suits are making their powers stronger. Or sorry, can you help clarify something for me? Did it give them those powers, or is it like enhancing their powers that they already had?
I think it's just enhancing their powers. Was
Okay, yeah,
kind of the
that's kind of
gist I
cool.
got of it. And then we see like standing off in the shadows, we see Tombstone, which
Yeah.
I'm like, and then indeed it jumps to a scene in Tombstone's office, I guess, and Hammerhead shows up. And apparently Tombstone's kind of a big deal in this Spider-Man universe, which I'm like, huh, really?
It almost seems like he moved in on sorry for video watchers watching me attack my face. There's some too much allergies going on here. Sorry, but yeah, I got the impression that Kingpin was like out of commission or in jail or something, and
Oh, okay.
Tombstone moved in, is like kind of taking power to himself, because there's who's the short guy, um the short henchman that he's got.
Oh, the guy who comes into his office?
Yeah,
It's not a henchman, that's Hammerhead. He's another crime boss.
yeah, another crime boss, but presumably they're kind of working together, but Tombstone's a little bit above him, it seems, because he's talking down
Right.
to the other guy. And basically they're like, oh, it's all about power, we need to make more supers and just let them loose.
Yeah, yeah, they mention that Tombstone is like, well, or Hammerhead says like, why are you working with the scientist guy to create supervillains? There are already a bunch of supervillains out in the world as it is. We can sick them on Spider-Man to keep
Yeah,
him
it's
busy.
like more cost efficient to set the guys already out there against Spider-Man than like make new villains.
And Tombstone's like, yeah, well, these guys, if we create the talent ourselves, we control them.
All about power. I thought you knew that, Hammerhead. Now get out of here, you bother me. And
uh,
indeed, Hammerhead's doesn't like Tombstone's tone with him.
right.
He's like, you used to be cool, Hammerhead. Now get out of my office. Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. From there, we get introduced to Spider-Man in the episode. He's swinging around. He's on his way to school. He lands by a dumpster and is like trying to put on his like regular civilian clothes over his Spider-Man suit. And Flash Thompson like throws a football, and some other guy whose name I can't remember like goes to catch it, and he's actually like running to catch the ball. He's running toward the garbage can, and Peter's like, "Oh shit." And so he's like trying to like hide, but he ends up falling in the garbage.
But then when they get the football and they leave that scene, he's underneath the dumpster. And I'm like, did you jump into the garbage can or did you hide underneath it? Either way, he's covered in garbage. And indeed, when he goes to class, he smells like garbage, and everybody's staying away from him.
Yeah, they call him Stinky Pete. So in class, we're introduced to Captain George Stacy, who's like, "All right, class, father of Gwen Stacy, who is in this episode. Not very much, but she's there." He's like, "Okay, class, you guys are going to be doing ride-alongs together with some of my kappas." And
Do we have to? And it's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, but your
as-
partners are going to be randomized.
yeah.
Dang it.
And so everyone inevitably like draws names of people they don't want to be paired up with. There was this girl who I don't know who she was who wanted to get paired up with Peter, but she doesn't.
Hmm.
She ends up getting paired up with Gwen Stacy.
Mary Jane? I don't know who. And there's a
No,
lot of characters that I have and I'm
No,
not a big comic book person.
No, it's not Mary Jane. And
He's dating somebody in
yeah,
this, right?
yeah, I'm guessing it's this girl. I don't know who she is though.
Daisy?
No, it's not Gwen Stacy, because this girl that wanted to be paired up with Peter ends up being paired up with Gwen Stacy.
Right.
Anyway,
And then who ends up getting paired up with Stinky Pete? It's someone they call Avril. That's her last name. Shoot, what is her? I'm jumping into the
IMDb's, see?
IMDb. She, who knows? Like, it's there somewhere, folks. Anyways, I think they call her Avril. There's a lot of characters I don't know. I don't know who they are. Oh, here we go. Sally Avril.
Yeah, no idea who that is. Probably an original character for the show, or a character that appeared in like some obscure run in like the 70s or something.
Sally Avril. But she's got at least the way she speaks, she's got kind of Harley Quinn vibes, and she's like, "Oh man, I have to be teamed up with Smelly Pete," and that's just kind of how she talks. And I'm like, is this voice actor going for like a Harley Quinn light kind of thing?
It's like a New Yorker / Jersey accent that she has. It reminds me of Marissa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now that you're mentioning it,
Yeah, have you seen My Cousin Vinny?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, with Joe
Yeah,
Pesci. Really
I
funny
had one
movie.
cousin that fucking loved that movie, like watched it all the time. So through proximity, I would catch the second half or the beginning half or whatever so many times. You ever have a family member that would just like find one movie and watch that for like 2 months before
Yeah,
finding like a new obsession?
my mom would do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I needed to like mix it up. Like I hated
Same.
watching the same movie, even within the same like few months. Unless it's a new movie out in theaters and it's the experience and it's really hype. Sometimes I've seen movies twice that way.
Yeah, I think I saw Inception 4 times in theaters.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road. Saw that a couple times.
The last movie that I went and saw multiple times in theaters was another Christopher Nolan film, Tenet.
Right,
which
I remember.
I liked more than most people did, but it's definitely a flawed film. But I didn't go and see it 3 times, like, out of an actual desire to see it 3 times.
It's one of those things where like a friend goes and
yeah, so this was like August of 2020, so this was like balls deep into the pandemic. Movie theaters had just opened up temporarily. It was when they were doing that like stop start thing with like opening things and shutting things down. They'd get like really eager to open things back up, so they would, and then they'd be like, "Oh shit, COVID is spreading again. Who would have thought?" And then they would shut everything down again. So this was like the brief period of like maybe like 2 months where movie theaters in our province of residence, British Columbia, were actually open in 2020. They shut down, I think, again in like October or something like that. But so I went and saw Tenet. I was literally the only person in the theater, which was great. A friend of mine was like, "Oh man, I really wanted to go see that," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'd go see it again. Sure, why not?" So we did, and then me and my partner at the time were going to go see another movie, but we went out for dinner first. Then this was like a month later. We went out for dinner first, and our dinner took a really long time. And by the time we got our food, the movie was going to be starting in like 10 or 15 minutes, and we're like, we don't have time. And we're like, okay, so what else is playing? And then I look, and it's like, oh, in an hour, Tenet is playing. And it's literally all that's playing within the next hour or so.
Tenet it is.
Tenet it is. So I saw that movie 3 times in theaters, and I'm like, all right.
For me,
I watched it once at home too. After that,
you've seen it more than any other person.
a lot of people complain about the audio mix of that movie, and to be fair, it's not very good. It was horrible in theaters. It is better on home video. The dialogue is actually much more audible, I will say.
Well, there you go. They fixed some things, folks. Go out and watch it. This episode has been sponsored by Tenet.
This episode is sponsored by Warner Brothers. Where if you go to the Warner Brothers store and enter coupon code LAZOR, LAZOR, you get 15% off your entire purchase, free shipping, and a special gift so sensual we can't even talk about it on this podcast.
Can't even talk about it. It's sensual. It's probably a cheap keychain.
With Christopher Nolan's face on it, just giving a thumbs up. A stoic face giving a thumbs up.
Oh, a stoic face giving a thumbs up. Yeah.
Have you seen photos of that man? He never smiles.
I guess I never really paid attention. Yeah. So what ends up happening here? Petey's like, "Oh man, I'm teamed up with like Avril Lavigne, and everyone's calling me Stinky Pete. It's not enough that I got Puny Parker." And it's like, wow, this school is not great, because he's kind of like he's a compact, sprightly, skinny kind of guy.
The gist of this episode is they go on this ride along. There's a bank robbery. Peter jumps into his Spider-Man costume. He swings in. he says something really bizarre to the Shocker. He's like, "Oh, a bank robbery, Shocker, isn't this a little beneath you?" And I'm like, "No, this is robbing banks is what the Shocker does. Like that's his thing. He's a goon basically. He's not like a big time supervillain. He's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. Make no mistake. But he's not he's not big time. Like he's just a petty. He's a crook.
Yeah, none of these guys seem to be big time.
So I found it weird that Spider-Man was like, "Isn't robbing banks kind of beneath you, Shocker?" And I'm like, "No, no, it isn't."
One thing I like about this is I feel like it captures Peter Parker shit talking his when he's fighting really well.
Right. Oh, and I want to mention the animation style in the show too. It reminds me a lot of the Clerks cartoon.
I see that that everyone is a little bit stylistically shaped different, but not to the extreme of Clerks or like Clone High or anything like that. More or less they're human shaped, but yeah, you're right, they do kind of have that single shaded kind of almost like
And like
Clerk
even
style.
even the way the characters move and like the poses they do is very like Clerks. I don't know. I almost
I
wonder
can
if
see
it's
it.
like if it's like the same like Korean animation studio or something.
I dig it, yeah, but I could see that the line work too,
Yeah.
right? Like it seems like the same artists. Yeah. So what happens here? They're like fighting Spider-Man, and Ox kind of like looks at them worriedly, and they're holding like money bags because that's the only way you store money, right? Um, and they go, "We don't have enough time for this. We got to get out of here. Smell you later, Spidey. Have one for the road." And Shocker, like, instead of shooting Spider-Man, which you'd think would damage him more, he shoots the ceiling above him and pulls the maximal the old like maximal maneuver, and like rock like debris falls and crushes him for a bit.
A reference to our Beast Wars podcast, Too Much Energon.
That's a big move on Beast Wars. Not actually being able to shoot the enemy, but shooting precarious rocks or mountain debris onto them.
I believe I dubbed that the budgetary maneuver.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The maximal maneuver is just hiding behind a
It's
rock.
just hiding behind rocks, and the Predacon maneuver shooting from
Behind
rock
rocks.
behind rocks.
Uh,
It happens so often that it
it happens in like every episode of that show.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you don't even notice too until you're actually like watching it like every week as an adult.
that's the thing. Week to week, analyzing every episode, it's like, huh, it's a lot of similar beats in these episodes, huh? So what's going on here in ye old spectacular Spider-Man? Hammerhead is like talking to an art dealer. Who is this guy? Do you remember this guy? He has like the mask, and he's like being like, "Oh, Hammerhead, nice to see you. See
Oh,
this mask here?
This is Norman Osborn.
Oh, I see it now. Is that he looks like his son Harry? They got the red hair. Okay, yeah, I see
Yeah,
it. So Hammerhead's working with him.
It was the hairstyle that gave it away for me.
There we go.
The
And it also
hairstyle,
makes
that's like
sense.
a trademark like Norman Osborn hairstyle.
And it also makes sense that he's like, oh, so you're looking for more supers, huh?
Yeah. Oh, and Tombstone mentions earlier in the episode that the reason why he's making more supervillains is because Silvermane is about to be released from prison. And I'm like, why is that a problem?
Episode,
I
help us out here.
I
Presume
I,
you're
I
a
get
kid tuning in for the first time, which is kind of what Lasercomb podcast is about.
right.
Right? Like, if we don't know what's going on, even when the characters explain it to the audience, then
Like
you
I've
didn't do a
read
good job.
I've read comics. I know who Silvermane is. I just don't I guess maybe he's like a rival like crime boss in this cartoon.
I'm getting the gist that kind of like Hammerhead and Tombstone kind of like took over, and they're worried about Silvermane and Kingpin. Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So back at the bank, the George Stacy and the cops are like are treating it as a crime scene, as they well should. And I think it's Harry who is like, "Man, this is so cool." And Flash is like, "No, idiot, this is boring. It would have been cool if the bank robbery was going on." And I'm like, fair, I guess.
You don't have to call him an idiot. No, this is boring. Shut up, you fucking nerd. I was hoping that we could shoot some bad guys.
So the cops figure out I think it's George Stacy pushes aside a filing cabinet, and there's a hole in the wall behind it leading into the dry cleaners next door. They're like, why would they be going into a dry cleaner? And George Stacy's like, I don't know. But they tried to cover their tracks, so get me the owner of the dry cleaning business. And I watched the episode. I'm still, even after watching it, I still wasn't entirely sure like what exactly this had to do with anything.
So what it's trying to imply, because as they find out that, oh, there were some things stolen, police uniforms, and then it cuts to them, the three, Ox, the Shocker, and the Rocker and the Spocker, in police uniforms with a whole bunch of fake gold bars infiltrating like the Federal Reserve, which is through the police station, I guess. Anyways,
I guess.
all the bank heist was a cover for them actually stealing police uniforms from the dry cleaners. Here's the thing. Do you know what attracts way more police attention?
Tell
Robbing
me.
a bank, not robbing a dry cleaners. Robbing a dry cleaners is like the the security guard walks by and goes, oh, guess I have to call the police. And there's like a file, like a report to fill out. But it's like, haha, we wanted them to think that we were robbing the bank, but actually we were robbing the dry cleaners. And the way we exited the bank through the wall into the dry cleaners next door. And it's like, why didn't you shoot a hole in the back of the dry cleaners if all you wanted to do was rob the dry cleaners? One thing I wanted to mention was when Hammerhead was meeting
Norman Osborn.
Norman Osborn, yeah. He has this like, presumably, maybe not, it's symbolic. It's like a mask, and it's like, hey, this is an ancient tribal mask from blah blah blah. And it said that like the wearer would slowly take on the personality of the mask. And Hammerhead's like, cool, I'm here to talk about business. And he's like, okay, well, maybe it is just a story. And that's a theme with Norman and the Green Goblin, and right, like taking on the mask of being somebody else, right? But then he does something a billionaire would never do. While in conversation with Hammerhead, Norman goes over with a hammer and nail right to this really expensive, beautiful mantle with all these other artifacts, and he just fucking hammers right into the wall like a nail, and then he like takes the mask and like puts it on the nail, and I'm like,
well, he is insane, remember? That's kind of his thing, is the goblin serum drove him nuts.
and indeed, that is the most insane thing I've ever seen a homeowner do. You don't just drive a nail in anywhere just to put up a single thing, man. You get like fixtures, right? You get the little like hook things, you get the drill, and hammer right into the wall. Look at this guy. It's like he's a billionaire and he doesn't care. But anyways, yeah, sorry. We I just thought it was really weird. We cut to, what is it? They're chilling out in the cop cars.
Yeah.
Oh, right. There's a scene where like Peter Parker's like, hey, I'm gonna go get some, hey, police chief, I'm gonna go get some pictures over in that alley like half a block away that's nowhere near the crime scene. Is that cool? And the police chief's like, wink wink, sounds good to me.
I get
Peter Parker.
Yeah,
and
I got the
definitely not Spider-Man.
I got the impression that in this show that George Stacy knows that he's Spider-Man.
Oh, he knows, but here's the thing. Peter thinks he knows, but he isn't sure that he knows, because they're not direct with each other. When they're in private, they're not like, he's not all like, oh, hey, like, thanks for the whatever. But like Peter kind of knows that he knows. It's kind of just unspoken.
Right.
Yeah, and I got the vibe from that, and I kind of liked that. And indeed, to cover his tracks, his absence, Parker like like glues his digital camera,
yeah, he
onto a van.
He webs his camera onto
and
the
then
van.
puts the pictures on an interval.
Yeah.
All right, like maybe every minute or 30 seconds or something. And it's like, that's weird. The focus is really bad. And you're standing in the exact same spot for half an hour.
uh,
Seems legit.
legitimate journalism.
But what's happening here? Those three cool kids, the rocker, the shocker, and the showstopper, they 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 like infiltrate the Federal Reserve and like turn off the alarm, and they're imitating police. And
Uh,
the fake gold bars that they were wheeling in, haha,
have their
had
costumes underneath,
had
and
their costumes underneath.
Spider-Man shows up, like Ricochet sonic spinballs through attacking him in an elevator shaft.
In an elevator shaft. That was decent. Yeah. Um, as they're tackling each other and that kind of thing, Peter says, "Hey, like," as they're slamming around, like, give me the number of your tailor. That shock absorbing like suit seems like it could be really useful. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because if you think about the forces that Ricochet is going through, you'd either have a headache or hurt yourself. But again, that's part of his power set. It's kind of like how super strength always kind of includes super endurance to some extent, because you see people with super strength like punch through like a metal wall, but they never lacerate their arm completely.
Right.
It's like one of those, because he can bounce around, his reaction speed and his endurance and everything is also the power set to be able to withstand that better.
I was talking to a guy at a comic book store once, and this was a guy who worked there, and they were talking about the power of flight, having the superpower of flight. Him and another customer were talking about it, and I'm like, well, if you have the power of flight, you would probably need super endurance and super strength as well. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, because like flying, I imagine like if you have the ability to fly, it would be physically taxing on you. And they're like, huh, idiot. It's not like you're like flapping your arms around or anything. And I'm
It
like,
was just an idea.
I'm
Shut
like,
up, you
I'm like,
nerds.
it was just a thought. Like you're,
You weren't arguing with them. You were like, well, I thought of maybe.
I'm like, presumably though, like whatever part of your body is like creating the force to like actually like lift you into the air. Like whatever like muscles or like whatever energy is being released from you, I would think it would be physically, it would get tiring after a while, unless you have like super
Unless
strength.
it was kind of like a magical or a mental a power.
Right.
Still probably costs energy, but it's not a physical exertion. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you were bringing up an idea. You weren't like, hey, idiots, check it. Your arms would be fucking jacked if you had super flight. Like, you were just kind of doing a thought experiment, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was just like throwing out an idea there, and they did that like typical like, fat nerd in a comic book store thing of being like,
Actually, idiot.
you are so fucking stupid for having that thought because
But also, everybody with super, like with flight in comics is fucking jacked.
and generally has super strength and like
Right? Or
so
they're a wizard and it's done through magic,
yeah,
right?
like Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Or an artifact, like a cloak, or Aladdin's like magic carpet, like this Iron Man suit. There's something going on there. So that's not ridiculous to me at all.
No, I thought it was a reasonable
And that's in the
reasonable
same vein.
point
Like,
to raise,
everyone with
but
super strength has some level of super endurance. Otherwise, they'd punch through like a wall and be like, oh, I just broke my wrist.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right? So, I mean, that makes sense to me. Also, you said something about some level of super endurance. If they're flying in the skyline and they're flying quickly, the wind speed would be freezing. And their
Yeah,
eyes, they would need goggles or their eyes would freeze.
not to mention the pressure the wind would be putting on your body,
Oh,
especially if
that
you're
too.
flying really
Especially if you're
fast.
holding your hands in front of you. It'd probably be easier to go feet first. Would that be?
I just imagine someone like flying across the sky with their going feet first with their arms like back behind their head, just being like fucking
Because it's
chilling out,
easier on your
dude.
It's easier on your eyes, and your legs are stronger than your arms when it comes to like weight that it can withstand, because you're
That's true.
walking on them. So I just pictured like a superhero or like a neutral kind of like villain or something like that. No cape or anything, or maybe the cape's going behind them. But yeah, they're like on their back, like feet are crossed, just like going feet first and being like, out of the way, bitches.
uh he like sails across the sky past like fucking Tom Cruise in a fighter jet, and he just like looks over at him and does just like looks over at him and pulls one hand from behind his head and is like, thumbs up.
Hey, and then just
Hey.
keeps going and goes past him. Tom Cruise in a fighter jet. And
Hey,
the
he's
fucking
done.
cape is going.
The cape is
Because,
like,
yeah, because the cape would be above him because he's
yeah,
going feet first.
yeah.
And he wears a cape anyway. Because it's either that or, and you know what, maybe in this OC that we've invented, people are like, why do you do that? And he's like, man, like unless you have like your spite like Superman and you have like super endurance, like one, it's really fucking cold, and two, I break the wind easier by going like feet first. Like, or it's either that or wear a helmet or use goggles.
And who wants to do that?
Ew, I'm not Mysterio. Oh, gross. I'm good looking. Good looking superheroes don't need to wear a mask.
No, they all they have to do is just put glasses on when they're in their secret identity. And
Everybody knows the better looking you are, the less you need to disguise your secret identity.
Because that's how that works, right?
Like Wonder Woman, she just like puts on like normal clothes, and
Right.
she's just another broad in the street, until she like blocks a car crash.
So what happens in the rest of the episode? They fight. Spider-Man stops them. That's kind of the gist of what the rest of the episode. And at the end of the episode,
They try to get away with a train that's underground.
yeah, and at the end of the episode, Flash and there's this one part where my cousin Marissa Tomei says to Peter that he like contaminated the dating lines or something like that by like dating a cool chick. And
Yeah, and now because he dated a cool chick, the cool girls are dating like geeky guys. The geeky
like
girls are
Flash,
dating the cool guys.
yeah, I thought it was a weird
Because Flash is going
thing.
after a nerd. I don't even remember who it was, a girl with glasses.
I
Because at
think
the beginning of the episode, he's like, hey, want to see the winning pass? And she's like, no.
I think it's Liz Allen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, so at the end of the episode,
Oh, and Harry was juicing?
yeah, that's the end of the episode. Flash is Harry. Flash is like bitching that like Harry went away and like abandoned the team because apparently Harry was on the football team with him.
Yeah, I guess he was on the football team, and for some dumb reason, Harry admitted to Flash because Flash was like, hey, dummy, you weren't there for like the championship game.
Yeah, you just went on some vacation in Europe with your
mom, you fucking
And-
loser. And he's like, actually, I was in rehab because I was juicing the green gobbledygook.
Yeah, the green. I was juicing goblin serum, and Flash is like, "Wait, you were fucking juicing, man? Like, don't tell anyone, because that'll like
That will make the matches during the preliminaries invalid, and we'll lose the championship.
We'll lose the championship, and I will have like broken my leg or whatever's wrong with him for nothing."
Oh, he busted a knee during it, and he's using
He's using
cane.
a cane.
Yeah. So interesting kind of character. Like, I actually think that's interesting story.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening here? He ends up,
and then I think the episode ends with Harry in his bedroom, and like there's like a silhouette of a goblin or like a shadow
and
of
he
a
like
goblin.
moves the a carpet, and there's a secret like compartment in the floor.
Right.
And he's juicing. He's thinking of juicing again.
Yeah.
Back when he used to be somebody.
Yeah, because Flash like kind of pushed him around earlier, and I would assume that made him feel like kind of inadequate because, well, he wouldn't have been able to get away with that if I was on that goblin serum, damn it.
But or it's well, here's why that happens. Before it shows him kind of looking at his goblin, green gobbledygook, goblin-y gook, he Flash ends up telling the greater authorities that Harry was juicing.
Right.
And I guess just word of mouth is enough to prove it, because it makes a big show of like some official guy opening like this big glass display case and moving this oversized trophy. It's like 7 feet tall. Looks like it should weigh 500 pounds, moving the trophy away and being like, well, you guys lost it. And the whole team is there. And they're like, thanks a lot, Harry, you fucking loser. Better watch your back, bitch. Yeah, people are like, why did you tell, you fucking nerd? And Flash is like, actually, I did. I couldn't live with the guilt.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah. I forgot
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
And I'm like, is it? Or are you sabotaging Harry? And indeed, the girl with the glasses that he's been trying to hit on,
Liz.
she comes over and she's like, I thought that what you did actually took a lot of courage, and we should get coffee. And I'm like, I guess that's all it takes to get the nerdy girl, folks.
Tensity, integrity, and intelligence.
Yeah. So Flash is going on a date with Liz. Good for you.
Well done, I guess, Flash.
Well done. Yeah.
Anyway, that was episode 39 of the Lasercomb podcast, where we were talking about episode 22 of the Spectacular Spider-Man. Cal, you just caught a random episode of the Spectacular Spider-Man. Would you be willing to tune in next week?
You know what? I actually did like this. I would. This is the first and only episode of the Spectacular Spider-Man that I've seen. And as the episode went along, I ended up liking the teenager interactions and the drama there. And the villainous stuff, though, was kind of like I don't give a fuck. Right. But I liked all the other stuff, oddly enough. And I like this Peter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would.
Fair enough.
What about yourself?
I would not. I actually found this quite boring, to be honest. I like
we yada the heist because it's so boring.
Yeah.
There's a train underground when there shouldn't be, right next to the Federal Reserve. And by the way, the biggest, there's more gold bars in this like room than there are humans on Earth. Like 20-foot tie, like. And indeed, the comical, because as Spider-Man's stopping them and they're trying to get away, they're just kind of holding like 1 or 2 gold bars each. Like their heist was thwarted entirely.
Yeah, so no, not gonna tune in next week. Well, there you have it, folks.
Well, there you have it.
Best way to support the show, go to patreon.com/lasercomb, LAZORCOMB, where at the $10 tier, you can pick a show for us to do what we just did. Review a random episode. You get to pick the show. There are some limitations, but, well, if you're a patron, I'll explain them to you before I ask for your submission. So, and you also get a bunch of other stuff like preamble audio, a news show that we do periodically, commentary tracks, the whole shebang. So patreon.com/lasercomb. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/lasercomb, or you can follow me on Twitter @lasercomb. Cal, you are at?
And I am at NeoCal, NEO_KAL.
We'll be back real soon with the final installment of Spider Month on this podcast, where we're going to be talking about the 1970s live action Japanese Spider-Man show. And so to figure out what episode we're going to review of that, by the way, it's available. Every episode is available for free to watch on YouTube, and this show that we just watched is available to watch on Netflix, at least in Canada. Which is where I watched it.
I watched it on. Oh yeah, we usually make a point of finding where we watch it. It was just Daily Motion. I just like Googled it, and I was like, oh, Daily Motion still exists. Cool.
Today I learned.
Yeah.
So as always, we're gonna go to the old trusty random number generator. I believe the Japanese Spider-Man has 41 episodes. Yep, 41. Ran from 78 to 79. So one random
Nice.
episode between 1 and 41, and here we go. Ah, 13.
Lucky number 13.
The luckiest of numbers. The Skull Group versus the Devilish Hearse.
Amazing.
I
I hope that's exactly what it sounds like.
I'm sure it is. Episode 17 is called Pro Wrestler Samson's Tears.
Huh.
So we'll be back real soon with that, and keep an eye out for it. And until then, I've been The Siege, one of your hosts.
And I'm NeoCal.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Yeah. Take that, Dr. Octopus.
Thwip.
Thwip ya. That's what they called me in college, the Thwipper.
Boom.